regular Chairman's Update. Happy 4th of July! It's a great weekend coming up. We got the 4th of July on a Saturday this year. That's great. It'll be a whole weekend celebration of America's 250th anniversary. It's a great year, a great weekend holiday. It's been part of a celebration we've been enjoying almost the whole year. We kind of look at it as a celebration that begins this weekend, the 4th of July, and kind of extends through the summer and into the fall. As you know, this fall, the WaGOP annual fall dinner will have Nick Shirley as our featured speaker. And it's going to be a great celebration of what's best in America, what's best in Washington State. Also happening in September this fall are these Patriot Games, the American kind of Junior Olympic Games that are going to be happening back east. Kids 14 to 17 can participate in a number of kind of Junior Olympic style sporting events, and that's something that you're going to be hearing a lot more about. If you have young people in your family or your neighborhood who are good athletes, they could be part of this new athletic competition that will be happening. So really, we look at it as something that starts this weekend, the 4th of July, and goes through September when we'll be celebrating our annual dinner, the State Republican Party's annual dinner with Nick Shirley. And all the while, of course, we've got the midterm elections going on. And in the midst of all of this happening will be the just announced National Convention, Republican National Convention, midterm convention, also happening in September. The convention will be the 9th and 10th of September, so the weekend before our state annual dinner. And this is going to be in Dallas, Texas. It's going to be a little unusual. We don't, as a national party, usually do a midterm convention. So this is going to be a little unusual this year, but the president and a lot of the Congress members and U.S. senators felt very strongly that this was the right time to do a midterm convention, a kind of celebration of America. And certainly the 250th anniversary is part of that theme and part of that celebration. So there's so much going on. It's going to be a great summer, starting this weekend with the 4th of July and running through the fall with this new midterm national convention, and here in Washington State, our annual dinner with Nick Shirley. So that's kind of what we see going on. It's worth pointing out too, while I have your attention, this week, kind of the week before the 4th of July, there have been a number of major decisions, precedent decisions, coming out of the U.S. Supreme Court back in D.C. And several of these decisions affect us here in Washington State particularly. There were a number of these decisions, but I'm going to talk about the two probably most significant to us here in Washington State. One was a decision we weren't so keen about. That was the decision in the so-called Watson case, which the U.S. Supreme Court considered about when ballots can be received and counted in mail-in voting states. And of course, Washington State is a mail-in voting state. So we mail our ballots in here. The Watson decision really raised the question, when can a mail-in ballot, when must it be received in order to be counted? And there was an argument in that case that mail-in ballots should be received by election day, not after election day. But the U.S. Supreme Court ruled that each state can determine its own law on this, its own policies, and that there is not a uniform deadline when mail-in ballots have to be received. here in Washington state, we have among the loosest state election laws on when a mail-in ballot can be received and counted. Here in Washington, the law is, as long as the ballot is postmarked by election day, so on election day or earlier, it can be received up to 21 days after election day and still be counted. This is controversial. In most states that do mail-in ballots, there's a grace period, they call them grace periods, of 3 days or maybe 5 days after election day when the postmarked mail-in ballot can be received and counted. So the U.S. Supreme Court ruling said those rules can stand. And our rule here in Washington can stand 21 days after election day. A ballot, now it has to be postmarked by election day or earlier, but it can be received by the election office up to 21 days later. Now, what can we do about this? We need to be more diligent in observing ballots that are coming back into election offices around the state, and that's usually your county auditor's office. The county auditors in each of the 39 counties will usually have an election office that's part of the county auditor's operation. We need to have observers there to watch the processing after election day and ballot counting, which we already have, but they need to pay particular attention to those late arriving ballots to make sure they are postmarked. If they aren't postmarked, they're not supposed to be accepted and processed to be counted. So the postmark on the envelope that is carrying the ballot back into the election office becomes more important than ever. We need to make sure that the election offices in the 39 counties are following the law and make sure that ballots that arrive late, up to 21 days after election day, have that postmark on them from election day or earlier. So that's going to be a new emphasis in our observing of election processes. There are more things we can do, but that was that decision, and it was a critical one. The other decision that was important has to do with boys and girls sports, whether states can ban biological boys playing in girls sports. And the U.S. Supreme Court ruled that states can do that. States can pass laws that say boys cannot play in girls sports. And this is important because we have, of course, on your ballot coming up this November, an initiative already qualified, already going to be on the ballot, that would say boys in Washington state cannot play girls sports. And it doesn't matter if the boy identifies as a girl, a biological boy cannot play in girls sports. So the U.S. Supreme Court ruling allows that initiative to go forward, and if the initiative passes, and most of the polls indicate it will pass, then that is good law, good constitutional law. So the U.S. Supreme Court ruling in that case is helpful to better policy here in Washington. There's a lot more to talk about. There were a number of other rulings from the U.S. Supreme Court recently, but I'll end up with this. If you remain concerned about election integrity and election processes here in Washington, right now, the best thing that will help with election integrity is passage in Washington, D.C. of the Save America Act. That's that federal law that combines a number of election reforms and transparency and accountability requirements that would help with elections everywhere. So the recent U.S. Supreme Court rulings put more emphasis on that Save America Act. And of course, here in Washington, where we elect our Supreme Court judges, we're going to be talking a lot more as we go forward about the good candidates for the state Supreme Court here in Washington. The WA GOP recently expanded its recommendations up to 4 of those judge candidates. Dave Larson, David Stevens, and now we add Laura Christensen Kohlberg and Todd Bloom to that list of recommended state Supreme Court judge candidates that the WA GOP supports. So that's it. A lot going on. Again, and really, this segment begins and ends with Happy 4th of July. I hope your weekend is great. Let's celebrate America's 250th. There's so much that is wonderful and deserves to be defended about our great nation and our beautiful state. Until next time, stay strong and be well.